tomorrow. So instead of talking about the day of, I decided let's talk about it the day before, or before the Astro event, so we have time to prepare a little bit. So tomorrow, Friday, May 5th at 10:34 a.m. Pacific time, we will have full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And what I'm going to do today, actually, let me first introduce myself in case you don't know me. So my name is Tara All. I am the resident astrologer here at Sage Goddess. One of my favorite things to do is to get on here live and chit chat about astrology and how it can help us, and how sometimes it feels like it's kicking our asses, but really it's all just a reflection. And full moons are already super emotional times. So that is a given. And Scorpio is a super emotional sign. So if you're feeling extra feelings, if you're feeling extra emotional, if you're feeling triggered, if you're feeling like things are just kind of difficult, that's kind of par for the course with this energy. I was this morning posting something on my Instagram account because I was just kind of feeling into the energy. And this last weekend, my partner and I did some camping, and we went to a place that we'd been 4 years ago. And you guys may have heard me talk about this earlier this week, but it's still on my mind. So we were camping out in Super Bloom area 4 years ago, and there's this house and it's falling down. But it was really cool, so I wanted to get out, and I asked him to take pictures of me there. And even though it was falling down, there was still a structure, so you could really kind of still see how it was put together, and there was still enough of a porch that I could sit on it without him freaking out, because normally he would be like, if it's unsafe at all, he would not want me to touch it. And so we were back at the same place just last weekend, and now that house, there is no structure. Like, there was no safe place to sit. He didn't even want me to stand by it. He's like, that whole thing could fall on you at any second. And it really made me feel into the energy of this full moon eclipse that's coming tomorrow in Scorpio. And the words that came to me around it were, how do I need to come undone? How do I need to let go and actually fully come undone? Not hold up part of the structure, but actually let it completely come down. And when we think about Scorpio in general, it can be complicated, intense, right? We know there's a seductive sexual energy to Scorpio, right? There is passion and desire in that sign. There's nothing simple about Scorpio. Scorpio is where we dive deep and we get messy, and it's like the cliche, it's complicated. That's a Scorpio thing to say. Oh my gosh, Tanya, you said it. Yes. She said the Duran Duran song, and I was going to bring that up because on my drive in, I was like, this is like the Come Undone Duran Duran song. I'm so excited that you picked up on it too. Yeah, everybody, I mean, maybe I'm dating myself, right? I am getting older. But yes, check it out if you haven't listened to, or even if you have, like, give Come Undone by Duran Duran a replay. I'm going to, just a little advance notice here, I'm going to do something a little bit different today, and after I talk a little bit about Scorpio and the full moon eclipse, then I'm going to very briefly do kind of a little horoscope style chat about what it means, what area of life it's going to affect each sign. And bear with me, please, because I didn't prepare that in advance. I got up this morning and I was like, we need to do this today. So there's it's just going to be, as Athena would say, pulling it out of my root chakra, but we can do it. And I think it's going to be helpful. But back to this Scorpio and the complication or the intensity or the tension. You know, part of the beauty of Scorpio is ripping off the pretty face and getting into the guts of something, getting into the motivation, really discovering what makes something tick, you know. And so, you know, with Scorpio, some of the words we can associate with it may sound like the more shadowy side, but there is a lot of shadowy stuff to Scorpio. You know, the sort of the trauma and drama of things, the deepest psychological attachments or obsessions that we have can be very much linked in Scorpio energy. The ways Scorpio is an archetype of power, right? So how we deal with power and feeling powerless and also the ways that we, you know, abuse or that we manipulate with power, right? Power struggles. There's all that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay, so Elizabeth is mentioning Scorpio rising. I'm very complicated. Yeah, right? And deep. And probably psychic, intuitive. Here's the thing with Scorpio. It is a bullshit detector, right? It can just researcher. Another thing we don't think about as often, but Scorpio is very much linked, we use the word transformation a lot, but also how do we sort of recycle, renew, or regenerate things? So think about pawn shops or secondhand stores. That's very Scorpio. Taking something and rebirthing it, right? Regenerating or recycling in some ways. Yeah, so these are all the different kind of ways that there can be, we can kind of feel the Scorpio zone. But it is at its shadow side sometimes completely in overwhelm, right? Everything becomes so intense that we almost can't move through it, right? The needing to know, which can push us to be detectives in an unhealthy way, right? Like needing to know every little text your partner sends, right? That can be a very Scorpio type of thing, or questioning what people really mean or what they're really saying, and sometimes being very self-protective in the process. It's interesting with Scorpio, it wants to go deep, it wants to dig into the mysteries. So it's also linked with all things occult, which I just mean hidden. The technical meaning of occult is just things that are hidden into the mysteries, whether it's, that can be spiritual things for some people, or into any of the things that are taboos is another good word. But sometimes we get so far down in that space, it's like we're totally swimming with the alligators, and sometimes we need to come up, for a little bit of land and a little bit of balance. But at its best, Scorpio helps us let go. It's funny, even though it can be controlling, what it really wants is for us to confront our limits, confront the things in our lives that keep us stuck, so we can transform into the next best version of ourselves. Which to me is not something that needs to be discovered. It's something that I already am, or something that you already are, but there is a certain level of unraveling to get to it. Hence my question today really is, how do you need to let go and come undone? Right? And that's my question with myself too. And so as we get ready to move into this full moon lunar eclipse tomorrow, oh, who's saying, I'm a control freak and double Scorpio. Okay, so yeah, Scorpio, that's the thing. Like, control is a huge thing. But again, the only way we sort of can play around in that Scorpio zone is by testing those things out, right? So learning how much we are a control freak, for example, can push us into the next stage of slowly letting go and recognizing that we actually don't have the control to begin with. It's an illusion, right? These are some of the things with Scorpio. So, yes, Scorpio moon plus Uranus and Pluto. Yeah, okay, so this lunar eclipse tomorrow, Uranus is in the mix, which is going to add an awakening energy, which is good, because I think it's going to help us really almost like suddenly get the awareness. The spotlight flashes on, right? Eclipses are always like flashing the lights off and on. So the spotlight comes on, and all of a sudden you recognize, oh my gosh, like if we use my house thing, I've been holding on to the frame of this thing with it falling apart for so long. Just let it go, because the effort it takes to hold it up is what's stopping the growth, right? So another thing I had noted down here is, what do you need to release so something else can grow? Isn't it funny, Vanessa, how Scorpio doesn't like sudden change, but it's an archetype of change? Which means that because what it really wants at a soul level is to grow and evolve and change, it will constantly find itself in circumstances and technically create those circumstances for itself that will test its limits to see, now will I change? Now will I evolve into something more? Now can I let go? Maybe this will help a little bit. So Taurus right now, so with the sun, so when there's a full moon in Scorpio, it means that it is opposite the sky from the sun in Taurus. So there's going to be, and full moons are always about an integration, right, between the energies, between the sun and the moon. So if we think about the integration between Taurus and Scorpio, oh wait, Vanessa, let me pause. I'm all for change for others. Yes, you guys are doing a good job of reminding me of where I'm kind of dropping my thought trail. Yeah, what I was going to say before is Scorpio loves to dig into other people's stuff, loves to like help them grow and shift or even create the circumstances that push it, right? Like Scorpio can push the buttons, it can dig into stuff, it can really confront in an uncomfortable way, but oftentimes it wants to self-protect, meaning, yeah, I'd love to hear all your deepest, darkest secrets, but I'm not going to really tell you mine. Maybe I'll share something so you think we're on the same page, but I'm going to keep something secret because there's a fear of vulnerability, right? There's a fear of what does it mean if I become exposed, or what if I do become undone? What if I do become a mess, right? What will that mean? And again, that can threaten this sense of power or control. But ultimately, it's through the vulnerability that the strength and power actually comes. You guys hear me talk about my friend Colin Bedell a lot, Queer Cosmos, but he was talking about this energy that you have to pay to play, meaning that if you want to have the Scorpio depth, if you want the seduction, if you want the intimacy, if you want the deeper magic and the mystery and those deep soul connections, whether it's with another person or with a spiritual practice or with some sort of magical thing in your life, whatever it is, that how you have to pay is you have to open up and be vulnerable, right? Scorpio is about shared resources at the deepest level. This is why sex is part of it, right? Because clearly that's a union where you merge at the deepest level, and with Scorpio is the urge to merge. But what's interesting is with that deep urge to merge, there's still this fear of betrayal, right? Fear of being manipulated, fear of losing power, fear of being unguarded. So, yeah. So these are some things you can just sort of be feeling. For me, I'm just kind of feeling into them, thinking about it as, okay, so if Scorpio's helping me go deeper, if Scorpio's going to help me unravel, if Scorpio's going to help me get a little more vulnerable and actually confront my controlling tendencies that actually don't allow me to have the intimacy or the depth that I really want to experience in my life. Yeah, let's talk. Karen, yes, well, because you can't talk about Scorpio without sex. But it's not just sex. It's any kind of deep merging of energies, right? Which we have that same experience in our different mystical type things, spiritual type things. And Scorpio also is, you can think about it merging on a financial level. So what it feels like to actually, whether you get into bed with someone physically or get into bed with them financially, whether you start a business with someone, right? Those are all Scorpio type things. And that is a risk. And it's a risk of a loss of control, because when it's not just your energy, you can't fully control it. Death is another thing that comes up with Scorpio, right? We may try, but we don't control our death, and we don't know what's actually going to happen in that time when we're transitioning or where it goes. In those moments, those deepest Scorpio moments, we go through the crucible, or we go through the Phoenix archetype, where whatever form we have held or thought we are in has to in some ways burn away, to use the Phoenix archetype, to rise up into the next form. Yeah. And so I was talking about the interplay and the integration between Taurus and Scorpio. And the thing is that with Taurus is the form, right? Taurus wants things to be stable and solid and simple and practical. It does not want the chaos or the tension. It does not want the emotional drama that Scorpio brings. Like sometimes a Scorpio, everything is drama. We joke sometimes that Leo is drama, but when it comes down to it, Leo's just an actor on the stage. Scorpio is the real drama. So don't let anyone tell you that drama belongs to Leo. It is at the heart of Scorpio. And yeah, Vanessa, the whole, and being scared of death, that is also very much makes sense, because again, we can't control it. We don't know fully what's going to happen. So this interplay between Taurus, form, embodied, stable. Here's my routine. I have my stuff. I don't really want to rely on someone else. Taurus prefers self-sufficiency. And so we take the form of Taurus, and now we got to somehow integrate with the transformation of Scorpio. I was sharing with someone recently, it might be with you guys. I know I probably repeat lots of things, and you'll continue to hear me repeat them because the archetypes repeat, and that's kind of one of the best ways I know to learn them. But Taurus looks across at the opposite sign, Scorpio, and it sees annihilation. Because it is annihilation in the sense that the form that has become too stuck or that we're too attached to, whether it's our thoughts, whether it's an emotional habit, whether it's something physically, whether it's my stuff, I can't give it up. Like, oh, my crystals, right? I can't, you guys, we're all part of the Sage Goddess community. Probably all of us here in some way are attached to our stuff. But to the extent that that has become too stuck and is keeping us in a container that isn't really helping us grow and be ourselves in a way we want to experience ourselves and the world needs us to be now, then yes, there's an annihilation of that part as we step into the Scorpio side. But you don't, like Scorpio is the deep end of the pool, but you don't have to jump in all at once, right? You can take, little steps, little bits here. Okay, so Amanda, yes. You're a Taurus and all for going deep to transform, though I want safe, secure, and grounded. Yeah, that's the thing. We all want that, right? Yeah, I'd love to change, but not going to change these 5 things about it. How about just this, right? That's human nature. And Scorpio, in many ways, is no. You can't hold on to that if you want to move to this. So you see, that's the risk, but that's also the excitement. One of the things we talk about Scorpio, and we brought this up a little bit here, is death. And sometimes Scorpio people ride a fine line, between life and death, sometimes literally. And some people look at that as someone seeking death, right? Or a near-death experience, right? And how I look at it is that Scorpio is so intent on feeling alive at the deepest level that it dances on that doorway. Because without feeling a little bit of that risk that something's dying or those moments, right? If you've had a near-death experience, is there really anything else that makes you feel more alive? Or even a little moment where you worried maybe that, I don't know, maybe you had a scare that you had something physically going on and you worry that maybe your life wouldn't be as long as you thought. Those things, if you want it, they make you feel alive even when they're scary. So it's part of the invitation from Scorpio. It's how can you really feel alive? And what is that dance that you personally need? What is the thing that, so let's now get into, before I run on too much here, about what we can all do. And there are different ways you can look at this energy. You can look at, with the Scorpio full moon eclipse, ways you need to transform, ways you're ready to change, ways you're ready to empower yourself. But I'm going to just kind of stick with my little key statement, but no, you can fill it in with whatever works for you. Where and how do you need to let go and come undone? Where do you need, or what do you need to release so something else can grow? So let's start with Aries. If you are an Aries or Aries rising, this is going to hit your 8th house, which is Scorpio's house. So for you, the where you need to let something go and come undone is the deepest stuff. It is the shadow work. It is the deepest psychological attachments. This could be very difficult relationship dynamics, power dynamics. This could be things that you've sort of tucked in the metaphorical closet or under the bed and you're like, I don't want to look at those things. You may actually need to let yourself be a little messy. You may really need to be more vulnerable, find a way, to do that. And also the 8th house can be anything that sort of seems taboo. It can be piercing through the mysteries, piercing through the veil. So, there's different things that are in this space. Sex, death, transformation are some of the key words. Intimacy, vulnerability. We've talked about Scorpio a lot. So if you're Aries or Aries rising, it's kind of just a double down in some ways on that energy, because for you it's landing in the house that's naturally Scorpios. So I'm Aries rising, so if you're in this boat, Aries rising or Aries sun, there's something deep that we've held on to for a long time that has either made us feel in control, that has made us feel that it would keep us protected, or somehow at the deepest level, and it's no longer helping. Now it's become a cord or an attachment that just is, I imagine it's almost like an umbilical cord, like now it's around my neck. You know what I mean? It's no longer protecting me now. It's actually not letting me fully breathe, and we want to be more alive. Yep, on to Taurus. Yes, how about Taurus? That's the second sign, so here we go. If you are Taurus sun or Taurus rising, this eclipse is going to hit you in the 7th house, which is all about other people, relationships, partnerships. So this can be anywhere from friends to, lovers, to primary partners, to business partners. Think about other people in general, and think about how you do relationships. So it doesn't always have to be like this. Coming undone or letting go doesn't necessarily mean you need to let a person go. But the 7th house, with an eclipse in the 7th house, there is definitely a new awareness and something to let go, and an area of coming undone about how you do relationships, right? 7th house also sometimes brings up boundaries in relationships. 7th house is, in addition to relationships, also can be art and beauty, but those also come down to relationships, because art is the relationship between, different mediums. So basically, guys, with horoscopes, so the most accurate way to do this type of stuff is to actually know where things specifically are in your birth chart. But when I say, like, for Taurus, this applies to your sun sign or a rising sign, you may also feel that if it's your moon sign. Traditionally, we say sun sign, rising sign, horoscope-wise, is where, this energy tends to fit. Yeah, but wherever you feel it, you feel it. So, I mean, like I always say, who cares what I say? Who cares what any astrologer or astrology says? If you feel something and that's true for you, that's where you go with it. Sometimes I'll be reading a horoscope, or I'm, reading a book about something, like maybe it's a whole book on Jupiter, and it might not be my placement at all. But if that speaks to me, I'm going with that. Okay, so now to Gemini. If you're Gemini sun or Gemini rising, it hits the 6th house. And the 6th house is about work, service, health. Now, there's always more, but those are the basic things. The 6th house is also, oftentimes it's interesting, even though we talked about Scorpio and the 8th house and its control issues, I think that the 6th house, which is Virgo's house, is the most controlling when it comes to the external environment. So this can mean coming undone or letting go around ways that you try to sort of keep, your body in order or working just right, or how you try to organize your desk or your home, or how you get your job done. Because that 6th house has a lot to do with that sort of, it's not work such in like the title of your career, but it's how you get your work done, kind of your work environment, how you get through your different duties. So if you think about, like, at home, the things you do, how you wash the dishes, how you take the trash out, all those sort of little things, maybe even what vitamins you take, what supplements you're doing. But I think about the 6th house too is also about following other people's orders. So sometimes that's something to look at too with the 6th house. Or just in general, what are healthy habits? What are healthy routines and healthy habits for you? So that's Gemini. Now we move to Cancer. So Cancer sun or Cancer rising, this is the 5th house. So back to this, I'll keep repeating it, but you guys know I'll repeat it anyway because it might help. Where do you need to let go and come undone? So if you are Cancer or Cancer rising, now we're looking at 5th house stuff. And 5th house is about creative self-expression, it's romance, it's passion, it's pleasure, it's doing the things we love. It's also children, right? It's all of our creation. So children are, of course, one thing that we create, but it's anything that we create. And when I think about how do we, need to let go and come undone with the 5th house, sometimes it's the way we put ourselves out there in the world. Sometimes it's our attachments to needing to be seen a certain way. I think, again, the 5th house, if I didn't mention it, is Leo's house. And Leo, that energy oftentimes is very much attached to being loved or seen, or, oh, is there enough likes? Or like, you know, for me, if I get done with this live and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, hardly anybody watched it, that would be an example, right? And this is actually very fitting because I'm a Cancer sun, right? So this would be a good exercise for me. How can I let go and come undone around the way that I think I'm supposed to show up, the show that I'm supposed to be putting on in my life, whatever that looks like? Yeah. So on to Leo. Leo sun, Leo rising. This eclipse will be in your 4th house, full moon eclipse in the 4th house. So this is around coming undone and letting go around something around home, family, right? Which we know is like a big conversation. The 4th house also is our emotional habits and kind of our emotional nature. So if it's not like a literal adjustment or coming undone or letting go of something around a family or home dynamic, and you can extend that, you know, truly like anybody that you're kind of living with in your home situation, who you consider family, where you belong, you know, even your roots, because the 4th house has a lot to do with our roots, which go way beyond just our lineage, right? It's our roots into where we actually believe that we are connected in a spiritual sense. So, you know, there could be a certain sense, but sometimes this is coming undone around 4th house, around old childhood experiences that we carry with us all this time, and we keep having emotional reactions to them. Or maybe, for example, you know, I expected my dad to always be a certain way or do something for me, and I reach a point where I can actually like just let it go and come undone, let the house come down, right? And find a new way to find that emotional stability or nurturing that I need. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it's something as simple as just a little shift in home or family. You know, I mean, some of you may have seen on Facebook that, you know, Athena's getting, you know, a new dog. That would be, and she's a Leo. So this is a perfect example of, right, you know, something is shifting, changing in the home front. The family is changing. Yeah. Virgo sun, Virgo rising hits you in the 3rd house. So the 3rd house, coming undone, letting go. This is around literally mental stuff, right? What I hold in my mind, my thoughts, my thought patterns, my perception, the way I look at life, the way I connect the dots. Now, the 3rd house also can be learning, which sometimes means we have to come undone with what we've learned. Sometimes what we've learned isn't helpful anymore, and so that house has to come down so we can learn something different. Yeah, the 3rd house is also our immediate environment, and it's also traditionally siblings, right? So I'll just throw that out there. I know you guys, a lot of you know I tend to be a very spiritual, soul-centered, psychological astrologer, but the mundane stuff, you know, we don't want to forget. And so the 3rd house, with if you're Virgo or Virgo rising, this could simply be letting something go around a sibling, right? Or even around just something in your neighborhood, or just like any way you sort of connect kind of in your normal, like when I leave my house to go to work and I'm driving in, that's very 3rd house, right? That sort of immediate environment is the best way to put it. But I'd be willing to bet if you're Virgo or Virgo rising, it's a mindset. It's something in the head. It's some story that you've been telling yourself, and, you know, let it go. Let it go and see what comes in its place. So into Libra, the eclipse hits you in the 2nd house. So Libra sun or Libra rising, 2nd house. 2nd house is about money, resources, values. And so this one, you know, it's not always easy because it's not just money and stuff. It's also self-value and self-love and self-esteem, right? The 2nd house has a lot to do with what we value and then kind of what we anchor into and hold on to tightly. It's Taurus's house. So we talked about Taurus a little bit earlier, and the 2nd house has some flavors of Taurus because it's Taurus's home. So some of these shifts or letting go or coming undone may be around attachments to stuff, or old values, or even ways that we're just stubborn. Or maybe it's ways that you've told yourself you're not enough or you don't have enough, right? This would be a good time to let that house come down, right? Because it may not feel like you are enough, but just by the fact that you are here, you are enough because you are yourself. And as I always say, that is our main job in this lifetime, is to be ourselves. How could you not be enough? You are yourself. But these are kind of some of the second house things. Or maybe it's just old beliefs around money, right? Or struggles around that. That can also be it. Think about any type of resources or values. And then Scorpio. So if you're Scorpio rising or Scorpio sun, this hits you in the first house, right? So first house is the house of self. Your sense of self, your self-identity, your self-image, how you project yourself into the world, how you act on your own behalf, how you step up and take the lead, how you initiate yourself in this lifetime. So it's you that needs to come undone in some way. And maybe there's a more vulnerable way that you are ready to expose and step out into life, which is very exciting. It could be very scary, but very exciting, right? I mentioned it before, but Scorpio wants the truth. It wants the truth. Even if it seems ugly, even if it seems messy, even if it seems scary, it wants the truth. And generally, once we see the truth, what we think it was going to look like is not the same. Yeah. So in the first house, it's weird. It's almost like, is that me? It's almost like imagining myself, for all those Scorpio rising, well, looking in the mirror and being, is that me? Right? Because the first house is physical too. And as you transform and let go and come undone on the inside, oftentimes externally, things do shift. Yeah, Jess, I feel like you're coming undone in your mind in your mid-30s. That's taken a while. Well, I'm in my late 40s and I feel like I'm just like really getting into my mind coming undone. So I would say you're early to the party. And what I would really say is that we're all on time because we get there when we're ready for it. I have some clients that are 70 and they are more youthful, more like beginning things in their lives than some who come to see me who are 25. So yeah, with age, we got to deal with some physical stuff, as I'm well aware, And Jess, I love that you just dyed your hair black today because that's very fitting. And if you're Scorpio sun and Scorpio rising, this is an example of like that shift in image. And one thing I love so much about things like makeup and hair and clothes is that it is really cool to reflect what's on the inside and as it changes. Yeah. It lets the outside world and yourself see a new little facet as it comes through. Yeah. Okay, so Sagittarius. If you are Sagittarius sun or Sagittarius rising, this hits your 12th house. So 12th house is probably the most difficult house to interpret because ultimately it holds everything. I see some people are asking what the topic is. So the topic here is the Scorpio full moon eclipse tomorrow. That will be at 10:34 a.m. Pacific time. So what we're doing is we are preparing this time a day in advance so that anybody who wants to join me in this sort of discovery of where do I need to let go and come undone so that I can release something that's kind of been stuck or it has reached its limit of its purposefulness so that I can grow something new. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about. And we're going through now horoscope style, how that applies to each individual sign. So back to Sagittarius with this falling in the 12th house, and the 12th house being really kind of one of the most difficult areas to interpret because truly it is everything. The 12th house it represents in many ways spirituality, our connection with something greater. So that can be nature, that can be artistic inspiration, that can be spirit, that can be God, that can be angels, that can be your guides. There's not a definition about what that is, but it's connection with something greater than here's my physical terra on this planet, right? It's a connection with something more. And in particular, interconnectivity with everything. Yeah. Now, the 12th house, so these things like creativity, and all creative expression. And I know the 5th house is also creative self-expression, but the 12th house is also artistic expression. And in particular, through things like poetry and film, right? Things that allow us to sort of connect with a greater truth or a greater meaning or a greater inspiration that kind of comes through in a magical way, right? 12th house it also is magical things. and fantasy and dreams. So when we think about, for all you Sagittariuses and those who have Sagittarius rising, letting go and coming undone with the 12th house could be around your spiritual, your connection with things spiritually. It could be around, and I'm going to use some other words here, 12th house, compassion, acceptance, because the 12th house is a Pisces house. And those archetypes are about accepting life and ourselves and everything as it is without needing to tweak it, change it, fix it, heal it, right? There's that special energy with Pisces, 12th house, and Neptune. Those are all related archetypes about allowing and surrendering to what is, which doesn't mean that we give up and just say, okay, I'm not going to make anything better, but that we recognize that things are okay just as they are. And that there's more to our existence and more to life than just what we see through our limited perception. Now, the 12th house also can hold suffering and loss. So for some of you, you may just need to grieve. You may just need to come undone in that way to actually feel, because where the 12th house is a connection with something greater, on the shadow side of that, sometimes we feel lost or disconnected or confused. Sometimes we feel like we're out in the ocean, right, with no life vest or no raft to pick us up. It's a big field of energy out there. So, yeah. So anyhow, it's a big space. I hope I did a little bit of justice in giving a little bit of ideas around that if you're Sagittarius. This is going to sound weird to say this, but sometimes we need to come undone a little bit in our faith, right? And to really look at what is it, what does faith even mean to us? And where is our faith? Or maybe it's a lack of faith, and that's where we come undone. Yeah. So, okay, Capricorn. So for Capricorn Sun, Capricorn Rising, this hits you in the 11th house. And so this coming undone or letting things go, the 11th house can have to do with friends, community, networking, humanitarian type stuff, how we serve the greater good. The 11th house is also ideals. I call it the long game sometimes, because it is sort of the hopes and wishes and ideals we have of where we really want to get to in life to make our lives better for ourselves and for others. So, this could be a little checkpoint of, the need to come undone and let go. There may be some hopes or wishes or dreams or ideals that don't fit anymore, right? Maybe there's an adjustment in that area. Or maybe it's the way you approach community, right? Or the way that you don't approach community. Maybe there's room for you to actually belong more. Sometimes the 11th house feels a little bit alienated, right? Sometimes we feel like we don't fit in. 11th house energy in general can have that feel. Yeah, and the other thing about the 11th house is it's the house of individuation, which is really where we break free. That's where we break free and let ourselves be authentic. It's so cliche, but it is like, marching to the beat of your own drum. The 11th house has that feel. It's liberating. It is unfettering yourself from a bunch of old shoulds and rules and things of how I'm supposed to be and how life is supposed to go. And so if you let some of that, come undone, maybe what needs to come undone is some inauthenticity so that authenticity can come and replace it. Yeah. Okay. Aquarius. If you are Aquarius or Aquarius rising, hits you in the 10th house. So the coming undone and the letting go and all these things, the 10th house is career, it's public image. It is how the greater community sees us. So for example, if people say, oh, Tara's an astrologer, that's a 10th house thing, right? That's a public identity label. Now, whether or not I feel like that's how I like to label myself, you can see 10th house has that feel. So this can be maybe coming undone around who you think you're supposed to be in the world. I've been talking a lot about 10th house energy in general and that sense of public image or public identity. Who do you want or need to be publicly? How would you like, and this is not the people close to you. So imagine it this way, just imagine that the people in your life that, I don't know, maybe they're at your community center, maybe they're at your church, maybe they're part of this group, maybe they're I don't know, part of the PTA, maybe they are wherever the places you go, right? The people that don't know you really well personally, and you may never actually get to know them personally, but who would they say you are, right? That's kind of a 10th house question. One thing I bring up around this is that, like for me, even before I was an astrologer, I was very into having probing conversations around what does it mean? Why are we doing this? Kind of, I guess, without being trained as a therapist, kind of digging into therapy a little bit. So what I would always say is that sort of that catalyst for change and kind of really digging into feelings and really understanding why we do what we do, that's something that I would be doing even if I was digging ditches, right? So when I think of that 10th house public identity, it's that kind of stuff. Like, for example, you might be a healer, and it doesn't matter if you work at the grocery store bagging groceries, right? If you're a healer, that's that, and people would know you that way. And even if you were bagging groceries at the grocery store, people at the grocery store would know you were a healer, right? And so same like for me, when I was working in healthcare all those years in administration, people would joke that the spare chair in my office was the therapy chair. It's because that's just what I did. So I hope that helps a little bit with the 10th house. 10th house can also be looking at responsibilities, things you're accountable for, things you're in charge of. Maybe you need to come undone, Aquarius rising, around things that you thought you had to keep hold up and hold the commitment and be in charge and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Maybe there's something in that area where you're ready to come undone, because maybe it's really not the best commitment or the responsibility that you need to do at this time. Right? So it can go all kinds of different ways, but I find with 10th house, oftentimes there's a tendency to step up and take responsibility and then not want to drop the ball. And sometimes that commitment has just run its course. Yeah. Oh, Jessica, when I said catalyst for change, she got a notification at that moment that the moon moved into Scorpio. Yeah. So you know what? It's awesome when you don't plan things and you see the astrology that way, because like one of my teachers used to always say, astrology is redundant when you're living your life. It literally reflects what is happening. Now, it helps us understand, helps us be conscious, which to me is invaluable, but that's a perfect example of it. So yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jessica. So let's do the last one, Pisces. Pisces rising hits you in the 9th house. So 9th house is really where we explore the unknown. So it's the house of seeking and travel and religion and philosophy. So, and in particular, personal truth, right? In the 9th house, that's what we're discovering. We're discovering, what is my personal truth? What do I actually believe in? And so to discover that, we oftentimes, almost always, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we have to take a journey out of what we know and put ourselves in an unknown circumstance so that we can discover ourselves authentically in that place. Yeah. So in this 9th house, what might need to come undone? What might you need to let go of? Maybe it's old truths or old belief systems. They don't have to just be religious, right? Any way that we sort of say, this is how life works, it always goes this way, my mom said, or people always say, right? Those are types of things to look at. Is it true for you now? Is it It's funny with the 9th house, it's Sagittarius' house. And one of my teachers used to say that Sagittarius is one of the signs associated with lies, all the way from little fibs to big, huge, outrageous lies. So when you're dealing with 9th house and trying to discover truth, one of the ways we come to the truth is by dealing sometimes with things that are not true. So sometimes people that have a lot of planets in the 9th house, when I'm working with them, will talk about, have they been living a lie? And I don't mean that in some weird, creepy, dysfunctional way. I just mean, have you been living a life that's not true to you? And this can be a time really then to let that house come down, right? It's not going to get you where you need to go, right? What house will? And in the 9th house, it might look totally unlike something, that you've ever lived in before. Maybe it's an igloo, or it's a tiny little beach house, or it's, I don't know, it's a space station, and take that metaphorically, but that's the type of shift that can happen. It's like, wait a second, right? This isn't, where I am doesn't align to where I am. So then I take a trip, metaphorical trip or a real trip, to discover what is there. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that's been a little bit helpful. I always love spending time with you guys. Karen's done a much better job than I have this time of talking about that. Yes, we have a ritual tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time with Athena for the full moon eclipse, which will be amazing. Highly recommend it. She does such an amazing job. And she and I have actually been talking quite a bit about this type of energy lately. So I know that she is really infused and ready to share it with you. So it'll be a blessing if you can tune in. And then tomorrow happens to be 5/5. So 5/5 is like one of the biggest manifestation abundance days of the whole year, happens to fall on the same day as this full moon eclipse. So I think if you really want to step into this space of how can you transform and let go and come undone so something new can grow, there's this extra sort of abundant boost of energy to help you do it. It's sort of like, if you take the little risk, get a little bit in the deep end of the pool, whatever that means for you. Because I know that if you're like me, in some areas we'll go deep all the time, but you know those few little areas where you're like, oh, hell no. Those are the ones that want your attention now. And those are the ones that will shift the whole paradigm of your existence. So, yes. So I hope I'll be at the ritual tomorrow. So I hope to see you there. And I know Karen also linked to classes here, but if you want to geek out with me and Athena more with astrology, I co-teach with her living astrology classes that are part of our Living Magic program. It's one of my absolute favorite things this year, and would love to have your mind, your voice, and your heart with us. Otherwise, you guys, happy eclipsing. Love you. Bye.